So this is a press conference about the.
All we might do, folks, is we'll do.
Hang on.
We'll get a panning shot with banners at the end. We can fast it out a little bit. But at the moment, everyone can gather in. Yeah, primary speakers in front. So Paul, Riley, Sue, Josh, and other primary speakers. Yeah,
It's very well orchestrated. The he was just trying to get everyone to come and gather, and now this guy's doing it. Obviously, a media guy. Oh, or is it? I don't know who he is. Maybe he's. He might have something to do with some Higginson. But anyway, so let's see what it said. No, I thought there would be some media here, but it's pretty much just this guy. I think he's ABC cameraman, and that's kind of it. All right, let's wait and see what happens.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Paddy Gibson. I do a lot of Aboriginal rights, protest organising, also Palestine Solidarity organising here in Sydney, and I've been involved with supporting the constitutional challenge to the Minns government's draconian anti-protest laws. That's going to be heard next week on the 26th of February. Everyone you see behind you here is supporting that challenge to the legitimacy of these laws. And more importantly, we challenged those laws on the streets last Monday night when genocidal Isaac Herzog actually came to Sydney. The people of Sydney, the Palestine movement, the broader solidarity movement stood up to reject Herzog's visit and to reject the legitimacy of Minns anti-protest laws and that regime. And we were subjected to horrific police violence. The responsibility for that violence lies at the feet of Chris Minns, lies at the feet of his anti-protest regime, and we're calling for an end to that regime today. We've got a number of speakers. The constitutional challenge is actually being led, the lead litigant is Lizzy Jarrett, who's a Bundjalung, Gubangi and Dunghutti woman. She can't be with us here today. She's actually in Newcastle for the birth of her first grandchild, which is very exciting for Lizzy. But Paul Silva is here from the Blak Caucus, a Dunghutti activist who's also a litigant. Josh Lees from the Palestine Action Group is also a litigant. But this is a broadly supported case, and it's being led by Aboriginal people rejecting the legitimacy of Chris Minns' attempt to silence our voices on their lands. To get us started today, we have Uncle Dave Bell, who's going to give an acknowledgement to country. Thanks, Uncle Dave.
When you walk on these boundaries, you ask permission to come into these boundaries, land of the Gadigal people. On behalf of our ancestors, we've been fighting 65,000 years. My niece, Nellie Dargan, you can see we're fighting the resistance, you know what I mean, all the way to the crown. So, on behalf of our ancestry, on the block, you know, we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, always was, always will be, on Gadigal land. Power to the people.
Thank you, Uncle. Thanks so much, Uncle Dave. I do have a statement here from Lizzy Jarrett, which I can hand out afterwards, but I'll just read a couple of passages from it because I think it really sets the scene for the entire push that we're making here for the end to Minns' repressive regime. She says, Chris Minns says police needed to attack us last Monday night because there was a risk that our crowd would threaten people listening to Herzog in the Darling Harbour Convention Centre. He says police attacked us because we were violently trying to break police lines. Both of these excuses are straight out lies. The huge crowd needed a safe way to exit Town Hall. Myself and others were trying hard to negotiate with police to move out of the way and let us take the crowd a few blocks to disperse from Hyde Park. This is the complete opposite direction from the convention centre. Police refused and told us we could go in the opposite direction towards Central Station. They threatened to use a sound cannon on us. And then they moved in and made arrests on the peaceful crowd as we are trying to disperse. Today we say enough brutality, enough intimidation, enough pretending that policing equals justice. Minns must resign. His anti-protest laws need to be ripped up. His attempts to ban pro-Palestine slogans and terrorise our movement need to end. We are exploring every avenue, legal, political and collective, to hold those responsible accountable. Accountability is healing, and let this be heard clearly, we are not going anywhere. We have challenged these laws on the streets, and next week we will challenge them in the courts. So that's Lizzy Lizzy Jarrett's statement. I'll distribute it afterwards. We also have our next speaker, Paul Silva, a Dunghutti activist who was arrested last Monday night and is another litigant in this challenge. Thank you.
My name's Paul Silva. I'm a proud Dunghutti Aboriginal man from MC New South Wales. I stand here today as a First Nations sovereign man. My sovereignty doesn't come from the Crown. It does not come from the colonial construct. It comes from my ancestors. My law, my connection to this land predates colonisation. It predates the landing of the first fleet in 1788. When I stood against the oppression of the welcoming of a war criminal, Isaac Herzog, I did so peacefully against a war criminal that was visiting First Nations lands under the direction of the Australian government. I stood because I will always stand against genocide, occupation of First Nations people land, and solidarity with First Nations people right around the world, and the oppression of Indigenous people here and abroad. You may not agree with our position, you may disagree with our position on what we showed up for on the 19th of February, but whether you supported our protest or not, we are all still human beings. We're entitled to dignity, we're entitled to safety, and we're entitled to exercise our right peacefully, assemble without being subjected to excessive force, being kettled by police, being pepper sprayed, and having elders and children brutalised at the hands of New South Wales Police under the orders of Chris Mims. What we witnessed on the 19th of February was absolutely disgusting and atrocious behaviour. Like I said, we saw people being pepper sprayed, we saw people and protesters being kettled, we saw people being pushed down and run down by horses. Even bystanders down the street was caught up amongst the chaos by New South Wales Police due to their lack of care and duty of care in the way that they was inserting their authority within society. The aggressive tactics and crowd control tactics had seen numerous injuries upon people attending to say that a war criminal is not welcome here on First Nations lands. This was not proportional, this was not democratic, and this is not acceptable. First Nations people understand that this is not an isolated incident. Our people have been protesting for decades for land rights, for deaths in custody, against systematic racism, against incarceration rates, to continue to ensure that our people stand in the resistance of our ancestors. From 1938, the Day of Mourning, to the Freedom Rides, to the 10 Embassy, to Invasion Day marches, protest is not new to us. Resistance is not new to us. Being met with force when we raise our voices is not new to us. There's a long history in this country of suppressing First Nations dissent and people that stand up against this colonial construct and government and stand in solidarity with First Nations people. And this sits within history on what happened on the 19th of February. And the Premier, Chris Mims, must take responsibility for what happened under his leadership. If peaceful protesters, including elders and children, can be subjected to chemical agents, aggressive tactics, then this government must answer for that drastically and urgently. And the Premier cannot guarantee, if the Premier cannot guarantee protection and a democratic freedom within society for all people, and especially First Nations people, then seriously he should consider his position within this government and corrupt system.
Yeah.
Leaderships require accountability, and we have not seen that from Chris Mims yet. As a Dunghutti sovereign man, I continue to challenge the structure. I continue to uphold my thoughts and my determination for justice and accountability in the streets, in the courts, and in society itself. Now that the extended New South Wales protest laws have lapsed, we are formally advising New South Wales Police to fulfil their obligations to facilitate and not obstruct the peaceful protest and gathering at Hyde Park for the International Day of the Elimination of Racial Discrimination on the 21st of March, 12 p.m. And we'll be marching from Hyde Park to the Sydney Opera House. And let's be clear, we're not calling for violence, we're calling for dignity, we're calling for accountability, we're calling where protesters will not be kettled, will not be pepper sprayed, and will not be subjected to brutalisation, excessive force at the hands of police under the direction of Chris Mims when we are standing up against war criminals, when we are standing for justice and accountability. We are out there as human beings, standing within our sovereignty, inserting our beliefs within society to say that enough is enough. And this government corruption within society and the leadership that we are seeing within 2026 and the way that they are inserting their force, being the New South Wales Police upon peaceful protesters within society, is completely and utterly disgusting. And I honestly believe that Chris Mims needs to be accountable for his actions and resign immediately, because what we see is a lack of accountability, a lack of duty of care, and a lack of care for people in society. Now let's forget what race, what colour they are. Let's remember that these people have families, these people are humans, they have the right to protest, they have the right to congregate, and they should not be subjected to brutalisation, they should not be subjected to tremaine, they should not be subjected to inhumane treatment by New South Wales Police or any police right across Australia. And we see this as a common occurrence for New South Wales Police within the town hall vicinity, where police do insert their authority upon a numerous amount of protests. And like I said, any protest that is out there to scrutinise war criminals, any protest that is out there to scrutinise Chris Mims himself, you best better believe police will be implementing the full extent of the laws that they can do. And what we've seen on the 19th of February was the extent of those laws being enforced, and they was enforced upon children and elderly people that were subjected to brutalisation by fully grown men and adults. And we've seen the videos that have came to air of police officers holding down a man and brutalising them and punching them. And these are the forms and the situations where deaths in custody occur, when police cannot keep a level head, when police cannot be in society and do their job. They get out and go under the directions of a complete thug, Chris Mims, and they go out and they think that they, because that a Premier of New South Wales have given them directions to go out and enforce a law, they think it's suitable to brutalise women, brutalise older people, run down people with horses under the directions of a complete thug that is out there being a corrupt idiot, running this government to the ground. And that's why he must resign, because we live in a democracy where it is a freedom to protest as a human, it is a freedom to protest as sovereign people of this land, as First Nations people. And I will say, no matter what laws are implemented upon stolen land, for us as First Nations people, we will continue to resist like we have for 238 years, and we will continue to call for the abolishment of the government, and especially of corrupt politicians like Chris Mims, like Anthony Albanese, that are sitting in positions, that are sitting there and allowing this stuff to happen within society, trying to silence our voices at the cost of brutalisation of human beings that can literally cost our people our lives. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Paul, and we'll be with you. We'll be with you on the 21st of March to take the streets all the way to the Opera House to protest against the continued racism experienced by Aboriginal people. Chris Mims is presiding over the highest rate of Indigenous incarceration in the history of this state. Last year there was the highest number of Aboriginal deaths in custody in the history of this state. His law and order regime is racist and it must end. Our next speaker is Sue Higginson, who was there with us from the Greens, who was there with us on Monday night, right at the front, doing her best to actually stop the violence that we saw unfold. Thank you, Sue.
We are absolutely united in our calls on Chris Mims to apologise in full for what happened. But the apology we're demanding is an apology in action. And that action is, firstly, he needs to make an ironclad guarantee that anyone and everyone who was injured as part of that brutal police exercise that took place at Town Hall, if they are open to compensation for the assault and injury caused on them, that they will be compensated in full, and that Chris Mims' special laws that in fact gave cover for the police, the declaration that it was a major event, which we now know reduces liability of police for wrongful actions, that they will not shield the harm that was inflicted and the suffering of the people who are now having to live with the consequences of Chris Minns' special laws and the police brutality. Number two, Chris Minns needs to accept his dreadful law and order approach in New South Wales has been a record failure. It has been a failure on the people, and it has been a failure for police, and it is a catastrophic failure for our democracy and for our cohesion of our communities. He needs to commit to repealing the anti-protest laws. And we know New South Wales currently has more anti-protest laws on our law book than any other Western democracy system of governance. It is shocking. It is no wonder what happened on that Monday night at Town Hall happened, because that level of emboldened police violence does not happen in a vacuum. It happens when the Premier of a state has been discussing the anti-protest sentiment that he has, the rhetoric that he has been engaged in now for years and years. We know that that's what led to what happened on Monday. I'm pleased that the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission ignored Premier Chris Minns' suggestion that an investigation wasn't warranted, and that now there is an investigation. I am pleased that members of Chris Minns' own government and own party are saying enough is enough. They're holding him to account, and they are questioning his leadership with us, the justice movement on the ground here in New South Wales. But most of all now, Chris Minns needs to take action, and that action is a commitment to stop his law and order agenda, to stop his attack on peaceful protests, and to stop his attack on our democracy, and most importantly, to repeal the anti-protest laws. We will, as a people, we will not stop until these actions have been taken, because we know they are the right actions for our peaceful movement for justice and democracy.
Hi everyone, Josh Lees from the Palestine Action Group Sydney. As we've heard today, and as is crystal clear, we know that Chris Minns' extreme anti-protest laws, his anti-protest agenda is what led directly to the shocking scenes of police brutality against peaceful protesters on the 9th of February. 20 or 30,000 people protesting peacefully were attacked by police as they tried to disperse, or were kettled on all sides by police lines. They were pepper sprayed, charged by horses, bashed, arrested, injured, and this of course includes the shocking scenes of men praying, kneeling in prayer, being attacked violently by police officers. We need justice for all of those people who were assaulted by police on that night, and that means well, we know that one of the effects of Chris Minns' invocation of the Major Event Act could potentially prevent police from facing justice and accountability, and prevent victims from getting the justice and compensation that they deserve. Now, that is something which could easily be changed by this Parliament. Right now, we call on them, and they could amend that Act right now and apply that retroactively, so that those immunities from people being able to get compensation for their mistreatment by police, that could be remedied today. We call for that. We also demand that this government either amend or repeal that Major Event Act so that it can never be used again in this kind of extreme anti-democratic way. Now, we challenged the invocation of those powers in the Supreme Court just before the protest on the 9th of February. We lost that case, but clearly we can see that the judge got that wrong. That is 100% clear. Everything that our lawyers argued in that case, and worse, actually ended up happening on Monday night with the extreme abuse of the police powers wielded against peaceful protesters, thinking that they were acting with impunity. Now, we are advised by our lawyers that anyone who suffered even the most minor of injuries as a result of police actions can fully exercise their rights to sue police, to seek compensation. So that includes even a minor scratch or being pepper sprayed means that you can definitely sue police, and we really encourage everyone out there to keep coming forward with their stories, to get legal advice and to keep lodging their experiences, their complaints and their testimony with the LEC to facilitate that investigation. We call on the LEC to pursue full investigations, proper public hearings, and really pursue the police for their brutal actions on that day. And of course, as people have said, we need accountability from the top of that chain of command which led to that police brutality. So that starts, of course, with Chris Minns. It includes the Police Minister, Yasmin Catley. It includes the Police Minister, Yasmin Catley, and it includes the Police Commissioner, Mal Lanyon, all of whom bear ultimate responsibility for these shocking scenes of police brutality. Now, one thing, of course, that we've seen is that Chris Minns has completely failed to take any accountability for his actions in leading to these really historic and shocking scenes of police brutality. He has refused even to apologise to protesters. He has refused to even apologise to those men worshipping in prayer who were attacked by police violently. Even on the eve of Ramadan, and even in the context of a terrifying rise of extreme Islamophobia in our society. And we've seen, of course, the disgusting comments from Pauline Hanson, but we also need to hold Chris Minns accountable. His sending in of the police to dehumanise Muslim people in prayer, his failure to even apologise for that subsequently, is contributing to this terrifying rise of Islamophobia, which saw yesterday yet another obscene, racist death threat letter sent to the Lakemba Mosque. Now, a lot of the media are only reporting a sanitised version of this letter. This letter called for the killing of all Muslims. This letter called for the deportation of all Muslims. This letter said that the only good Muslim is a dead Muslim, directly pretty much paraphrasing Pauline Hanson's quote. And it also, and again this is not being reported by the media, said praise Israel and called for myself to be killed. Now the reason I say that is because there is a clear link between the media and politicians' consistent attacks on the Palestinian movement and the vicious rise in disgusting Islamophobia that we see today. And that letter also praised the neo-Nazi Australian terrorists who carried out the Christchurch massacre. So this is a very worrying development, and Chris Minns is contributing to this Islamophobia by refusing to apologise to the Muslim worshippers attacked by his police under his orders on the 9th of February. Now, from our point of view, Palestine Action Group, of course, we refuse to be silenced by all of these attacks on our rights to protest and all of the slander we've received, and we'll be rallying again this Sunday, 1 o'clock at Hyde Park, marching through the CBD yet again to say that genocide is the crime, protest is not a crime, and that we're going to keep rallying until Palestine is free and until our government stops arming and funding the genocidal regime in Israel, which they continue to do.
Josh, it's just horrific to hear about those threats. We stand with the Muslim community, we stand with you and everyone who's been threatened, and we're very proud to stand today alongside Sheikh Wesam Charkawi, who's provided incredible leadership in the face of this police violence and the continued unacceptable Islamophobia from the New South Wales government. Thanks very much for coming on today.
So my word will be brief today. I just want to talk about the police in New South Wales police force and also Premier Chris Minns' responsibility. Policing doesn't happen in a vacuum. Before police steps foot on the street, there are directives that are given. There's also risk assessments that are taken. And so while the LECC will, and is one investigative arm and is a first initial step, an inquiry really sends it to the top. An inquiry asks those questions of Premier Chris Minns himself. It also asks the question of Yasmin Catley and what she said, the New South Wales Police Commissioner. So while the LECC is a first investigative step in pursuing police conduct on that day, what we are also calling for, and what the community is calling for, is an inquiry that talks about the responsibility that Chris Minns had in what unfolded on Monday the 9th of February. The young, the older were subject to brutal hostility by the New South Wales Police Force. People were peacefully protesting. We've got instances where men and women were racially vilified by the New South Wales Police. We've got people who were thrown across the ground. We've got broken vertebrae. We've got assaults. We've got people who had their back turned to the police, who were assaulted by the New South Wales Police. Ultimately, Mal Lanyon is responsible. There needs to be consequences, and that's what the community is calling for. Chris Minns brought the weapons expo into Sydney, battle-tested weapons into Sydney. He created an environment in New South Wales, which he has shown on that basis that he is unfit to lead New South Wales. New South Wales needs a measured leader, someone whose leadership is measured and equitable for all New South Wales residents, not partisan and alarmist leadership, which is what we saw and what we've been seeing over the last 2.5 years under Chris Minns. So the community is calling for an inquiry that says what role did he play, what directives did he give, what instructions did he give to the police commissioner, Mal Lanyon, that led to that night. And so the community is incensed by what they've seen. The community is incensed on the fact that nothing is holy to New South Wales Premier Chris Minns, and therefore are also calling for disengagement at an organisational level from the New South Wales Police Force to come up with a document that can talk about re-engagement. This is the situation that we find ourselves in, and we find ourselves with a 740% increase in Islamophobia. The attacks that we're seeing on visible people in garb, whether it be women, whether it be men, we're seeing a 740% increase in attacks. And the literature tells us that there is a direct correlation between speech that comes from politicians and what's reported in the media and the attacks on every ordinary civilians. So that is my call here today, an inquiry on Chris Minns to determine exactly what unfolded and exactly what instructions were given and what directives were given to the New South Wales Police Force before they stepped foot on that road that night. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Judith Trainer from Jews Against the Occupation 48. They've disgracefully tried to smear our movement of anti-Semitic, but there were many Jewish people who were attacked by police last Monday night, and that's the reality of who's actually suffered under this regime. So thank you, Judith.
Yeah, Judith from Jews Against the Occupation 48. What kind of state leader turns his riot squad against the good people of this state so that a war criminal can return to his intercontinental hotel room just up the road there without seeing us protesters? What kind of leader prioritises the rights of 7,000, in his words, mourners, over tens of thousands of us who are mourning 70,000 plus? Palestinians here are grieving entire bloodlines. Their sorrow does not warrant a mention by Minns, and they certainly don't get his protection. He says he didn't know what might happen if there were to be clashes between the two groups. That's insinuating some kind of violence from both sides, which is utter nonsense, never happened, never was going to happen. But precisely what happened in Melbourne last Thursday when Herzog was speaking, that's what would have happened here. Absolutely nothing. A peaceful march if we'd have been allowed to march as well, as we should have been. The police know our protests have been peaceful for 2.5 years, yet Minns continues to infer, as does the media, that our peaceful movement is connected to the Bondi massacre somehow. So he enacted the use of the major event legislation granting police extraordinary powers for what was actually an invitation-only private event, not a public one. And his legislation wasn't about protecting Jews. By the way, Jews do not require protection above anyone else. There were many, many Jews protesting all over Australia last Monday. In Sydney, some of us were pepper sprayed along with everyone else, and then we did have friends there who are Jewish from Bondi who've been directly affected by the Bondi massacre, by the way. One of our members of Jews Against the Occupation was cuffed and then let go. There was a 4-page ad put out in the Herald and the Age last Monday on the day of the protest, signed by 1,000 Jews who said no to the Herzog visit. And just want to mention as a side, when Josh was talking about those threats, we get horrific abuse sent to us all the time, not just on social media. I myself had an email where it said I deserved a bullet to my head, and a friend who's also here deserved a claw hammer to hers. That was in an email form, and the AFP were investigating, never heard anything after that. They never came back on what happened there. Maybe I should follow it up. Min spoke at the Opera House on the day of mourning in January about reclaiming, his words, public space, and he mentioned Bondi and the Opera House. Last week, presumably, he thought he could reclaim the CBD as well for Zionists. This is First Nations land, it's Gadigal land, not his state to reclaim. As for the police, we pay them to serve and protect us. Last Monday, they served and protected a few thousand Israel supporters, including Dutton and Morrison, attending a love-in with a war criminal and his entourage. For the rest of us, the police were there to kettle, charger, assault, choke and abuse people of all ages from all demographics and backgrounds, including the shocking scenes of the Muslim men and women praying peacefully in Town Hall Square. I actually walked past them as they were starting to pray. It was utterly peaceful then, so heaven knows how hell broke loose 2 minutes or so later. Those scenes have obviously gone around the world, and I understand that it was actually the Minister for Tourism that signed off on whatever the craziness was on Monday night. Seriously, those scenes have really done nothing for tourism around the world, Sydney, have they? Whoever gave us the order to treat us this way, whether it was the Premier or Police Commissioner, must be held accountable. Chris Minns defended police action, saying he would not condemn officers for doing what we asked them to do to keep the public safe. Well, we are the public and we certainly weren't safe. I know of 2 ladies over 70 who are still in hospital as a result of last Monday, and I'm sure there's many more. Yeah, actually just going back to the Muslims praying, can you just imagine for 1 second if that was a group of rabbis praying? Let's just leave you with that one. We've obviously been told they've been trying to push through laws. In fact, they had a law, didn't they, last year, which got repealed about not protesting within, I can't remember, whatever, 200 metres outside a religious establishment. Well, yeah, I guess town hall, Muslim, doesn't matter. The police office may say that they must be prosecuted, they may say they were just following orders, but let's remember that wasn't actually a defence in Nuremberg. So last Monday's horror was clearly a premeditated assault on our right to protest and in turn our democracy. These draconian protest laws must be repealed as a matter of urgency. If orders did come from the top, as we can suspect, from Minns' office, he absolutely must resign in shame.
Thanks so much. And as we've said, it's next Thursday, the 26th, that this case will be heard around the constitutional validity of the laws. It's being supported. Many protest groups have put in affidavits giving evidence supporting the case, one of which is Pride in Protest. And we have Riley Brook here from Pride in Protest. Thank you.
So Pride in Protest will be supporting this case, both because we stand in solidarity with our Palestinian and First Nations siblings, and also because we understand that this vicious anti-protest agenda does impact all of us. Over the weekend, Mardi Gras season 2026 officially began. And I think it's really important right now that we remember some of the history here. Almost 50 years ago now, a group of queer and trans people and their allies came together in Sydney to protest for queer and trans rights. It was also a protest very explicitly against police brutality. It was a protest against police attacks on gay people, on women, and on Aboriginal people. Now, police brutally attacked this protest. They assaulted, injured, and arrested dozens of people. This was the first Mardi Gras in 1978. And this protest was a catalyst for some of the most significant strengthening we've ever seen in New South Wales to protect our right to protest. And it's some of these hard-fought rights and freedoms that Chris Minns and his government are right now intent on stripping away from all of us. We should be clear, this latest wave of anti-protest laws are racist. These are targeted racist attacks on Palestinian and on First Nations communities and those that support them. But these laws do impact all of us. These laws impact queer and trans communities. Last Monday, queer and trans people were among the tens of thousands of people who came to stand against war criminal Israeli President Isaac Herzog and were brutally attacked by police. Cops, emboldened by the Minns government, first came for First Nations people. Then they attacked Muslim people in prayer. Police also targeted trans women with OC spray and with fists. Police assaulted and arrested at least one transgender person, misgendered them, and held them, forced them into the incorrectly gendered holding area before eventually releasing them without charge. While police were out hunting in packs through Sydney streets that night, we've heard reports that they were hurling homophobic abuse at queer people while assaulting them. All of this happened right on the cusp of Mardi Gras season, and we put the blame for this violence squarely at the feet of Chris Minns. Right now, we are seeing a wave of attacks on trans people right across this continent. It's more important now than ever that we can take to the streets and fight for our rights through protest. But this vicious anti-protest agenda is emboldening the police to brutalise us when we do. Every single time Chris Minns passes a new anti-protest law, what he's doing is creating more crimes, creating more circumstances under which police officers are encouraged to assault people. Each new anti-protest law Chris Minns brings in is inciting police brutality to greater and greater extremes in more and more circumstances and against more and more different people. This is the very antithesis of supposed social cohesion. So the Minns anti-protest laws aren't just an insult to international human rights law, which they do violate. They also spit in the face of generations of community leaders and human rights advocates from right across social movements. The Minns government's single-minded, racist, anti-Palestinian, anti-protest agenda is steamrolling the democratic rights and freedoms of all of us. But we are not going to leave the streets, and we won't be intimidated by Chris Minns or his attack dogs out of standing up for our rights.
Thanks so much, Riley. And the last speaker today from our coalition is Timothy Roberts from the Civil Liberties Council. Thank you.
Timothy Roberts, President of New South Wales Council for Civil Liberties. I join in my friends in calling for an apology, accountability, and the action that's been called for. I praise the groups that are challenging these the bad laws, the protest laws. They are still on the books. These are bad laws that should be repealed, and they haven't been. So in fighting for their causes and in fighting for the oppression that has happened against them, they are fighting for all of our rights. And I want to make that clear. It's not Jews Against the Occupation, Palestine Action Group, and Blak Caucus fighting for their rights. They're fighting for all of our rights, and they should be thanked and commended for doing that. Now, the Minns government has acted abhorrently. The Premier's legacy is corrupted, and there is not much he can do to affect that and change that. Much of what he does now, before this next election, will be fouled by the circumstances on Monday and his contributions to it. The police minister, in not calling for accountability, and instead of remembering that she was our minister, backed the cops unequivocally, has lost her respect in what her role is in our community, and her leadership is frankly dangerous at this point. So we call on both of them, quite frankly, to resign in the circumstances. Yes, these laws should be withdrawn and repealed. Absolutely, this legislative approach to law and order should be stopped. This regressive, police first, crime-focused approach to some very complex problems in our society is woefully inadequate and must be stopped. But stopping and repealing to the status quo is not enough. This is a dark time. The leadership the community requires and frankly deserves are positive steps towards human rights and protecting civil liberties in this country, in this state at this time. We call on the government to take that action. 131 groups, 131 community organisations are unanimous in a call for an inquiry into human rights. The Premier, the government has an opportunity here to show his leadership in taking us forward together, not just one right, not just one group. As you see together, these laws, these bad laws have affected all of us in different ways. It's time for a holistic, unified approach to the rights in this state, and that opportunity is before this government now. We call on that. Yes, his legacy is corrupted. Yes, much of what he has done and will do will be fouled by that legacy. What he cannot corrupt is the dignity and the human dignity of the person in their exercise of their democratic freedoms. What we saw was our fellow citizens taking their democratic rights, and they were attacked by the police that should have been absolutely protecting us at that time. And so while Minns hasn't recognised it, it is unequivocal that they are just another one of the community that's been affected by this. And for leadership at this time. It backs them in and protects our dignity going forward. Thank you.
Thank you much everyone for coming today. We've challenged these laws on the streets, these unjust laws. We're very proud of the stand we took last Monday night. We're going to challenge them in court, and we hope that they are found to be illegitimate. And we know that there is a long struggle ahead, with Chris Minns threatening to repress protest, threatening to repress speech. We stand with the teachers that are being persecuted by his attempt to persecute the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. Those of us at university where I work are facing a crackdown on free speech and our ability to speak up for Palestine. And we salute the leadership of First Nations people that are challenging these laws and have said they'll continue to challenge the threats on freedom of speech. There's a disgraceful history in New South Wales of trying to ban Aboriginal languages. But the Dharawal people, the language of this land, it has given us a slogan that we're going to take forward. They say Gadigal in, Gaza you, but Intifada Lunga. From Gadigal to Gaza, globalise the Intifada. We'll keep saying that. We won't be silenced by Chris Minns. We'll keep taking the streets and speaking up for Palestine. Thank you.
Yes, I would ask Sheikh Wesam a couple of questions.
So no, there's been no communication with the Premier of New South Wales, and I've seen what he said. He said that he's reached out to some members within the Muslim community. Yet to know who those members are. I'll be asking about who those members are. It's a very unfolding traumatic moment, and so those questions, I think, require real clarity, because the people want representation. The sentiment at the moment is one of anger. You can imagine the community is living. How could this happen on all citizens? We've had protests here for 2.5 years, and they've been peaceful protests, but this has been a voice for the people. So for that to happen, and then by extension for that to happen on the people who are performing the prayer, is outrageous. I mean, women were the first ones that were attacked in the back line. Women were the first ones that were put in the park. And there was pepper spray, words that were uttered, there were people that were flung across the ground. So people want the questions answered, and rightly so, and they want accountability. It's not good enough, even if there were a public apology. I don't think that goes far enough. A public apology is not really consequences, and even that, you see the resistance and you see the justification of police conduct from part of the Premier and part of the New South Wales Police Commissioner. And so they've created an environment, and there has to be consequences for it.
And so you haven't heard from the police commissioner either, directly?
I have heard from the police commissioner, and the very thing that I've articulated right now, which is consequences, there needs to be accountability for what happened.
The Premier keeps saying, like, obviously the police officers didn't mean to cause offence, but perhaps that sort of misses the point that it did cause offence. Is that, like, have you sort of maybe been able to bring that up with anyone at a government level?
Look, it's caused the utmost offence of what's happened. It's caused the utmost offence, and I think it sort of paints a picture of what happened to those people in prayer, that maybe had that not happened, Chris Minns might have been able to construct a narrative in his own mind. But that paints the picture that if in fact what was happening on the ground was real, these were peaceful protesters across the board, and that's what we've seen for the last 2.5 years. And so you can argue what some people may have intended or not intended, but the fact is it's cemented what's been going on for the last 2.5 years, and for many for decades, right? Surveilling. We're talking about disproportionate. We're talking about all the things that we've seen that the community has been engaging with on the New South Wales Police to say, hey, you need to pay attention to A, B, C, and D. This is cemented what they've been told for the last 2.5 years. And you can't expect the community not to be frustrated given the scenes that we've all seen and that have become global.
I read your reaction to the Premier's message last night, welcoming Ramadan. I suppose, did the Premier's message, is that, from your perspective, do more harm than good?
Absolutely. I think his message to the Muslim community and his message of Ramadan, I think all of the things that he's articulating, he hasn't embodied. And so the community is saying, like, this is further insult in the wound. And so, I mean, he's free to articulate whatever he wants to articulate, but the community has formed an opinion of Chris Minns. They've formed a very strong opinion of Chris Minns. He's taken a very partisan stand. He's been almost militant in wording. He's been an alarmist on many issues, and he's created such division in New South Wales. The community just doesn't deem him fit to lead New South Wales.
I had a question for Josh as well, if that's okay. You obviously touched on it, but I suppose just that initial reaction, reading your name in that horrific letter sent to the Legenda Mosque, I suppose, what was the first thing going through your mind when you see your name in that?
I mean, as has been pointed out, many activists receive death threats all the time. That's the terrible reality. I know I do online, mostly all the time. I'm sure our First Nations activists, Palestinian activists, obviously Muslims receive these death threats all the time. So I'm not seeking to, put the spotlight purely on me by any means. But the reason I brought that up is because, as I said, I think it shows the link between the attacks on the Palestinian movement, which is obviously why I'm being targeted, and the extreme Islamophobia and these calls for the killing of all Muslims. So obviously, at a personal level, yes, it's scary. And I'm told subsequently that those little stamps on that letter are actually bullets, like being stamped in ink and put on that piece of paper. So that is worrying. One more thing I would say about it is the police never contacted me to inform me that this death threat had been made. They still haven't contacted me to even inform me, let alone say they're investigating or anything else. They haven't even informed me that this death threat was made to me in writing to the Kemba Mosque. So make of that what you will.
They're pretty adamant they're investigating, but you would think perhaps that it's subject of, at least in part, the threat that might be contacted?
Yeah, you would think so.
Paul, I just wanted to ask you a quick question. You were at the rally last week. What impact did it have on you?
The impact it had on me and many other, attendees is, our right to protest as First Nations people. We don't accept the laws in any way, shape or form in relation to, scrutinising the system and the government. It really gave me an eye-opener as an advocate for the past, decade in relation to how the government will handle future protests moving forward. Implementing such laws where police can go rogue, and allowing them to brutalise people. I was, arrested and then moved on for basically standing there and filming the protest. And I witnessed many other people being brutalised and pepper sprayed and kettled by police as well. And, as an advocate that stands, firmly against brutalisation against police and against, that stands firmly against brutalisation from police, and authorities, the impact it had against me personally, was more an insight on what can happen moving forward. It's a learning curve for people within society on what police, powers can be given from a corrupt government, corrupt system, and an individual known as Chris Minns, to allow this moving forward. And, despite what happened on the 19th of February, all of us standing here today, that won't, deter us from standing up against, First Nations issues, standing up for Palestine and standing up for many other issues within society moving forward. Standing in our, in our resistance and in our authority, in asserting our autonomy within so-called Australia.
And how concerned are you that bystanders, and we've heard that there were legal observers there that were also caught up in this? How concerned are you about that?
We organise protests, to ensure the safety of attendees, and having marshals and legal observers, clearly identified at these movements being brutalised and attacked. It's a form of the system, a form of the police taking away that interim support on the ground when they are subjected to brutalisation and subjected to inhumane treatment from police. Because if they can remove the interim legal observers, that can obviously deter police and hold them to account on the spot in the situation. Well, if they can remove them, that will allow them to get away with ongoing brutalisation of attendees, because there's no legal observers there to obviously tell police, hey, I'm a lawyer and what you're doing is wrong, and you could be, you know, enforced against the law that you're trying to enforce as well. And I think that's one of the tactics that police did do on the 19th of February, was remove most of the prominent advocates, people involved in the organising space, and advocate space as well, being, you know, members of the Blak Caucus, being members of the, you know, Palestinian Action Group, and staunch members within society, a part of no group that stand within the individuality to stand up against the government, was targeted too, alongside the marshals and legal observers. You know, so obviously they can get away with the brutalisation of people on the day on the ground.
And you mentioned that you've got a rally coming up. How worried or concerned are you about that, given
you know, with the rally coming up the 21st of March, you know, to stand here on Gadigal land internationally for the elimination of the racial discrimination, you know, it's important that, you know, despite the laws lapsing and, you know, the New South Wales Commission are not extending those laws, you know, it's important that New South Wales Police and the Police Commissioner, you know, facilitate a protest and facilitate it with police that are not going to be hot-headed and come out and, you know, incite violence and brutalisation upon attendees, because at the end of the day, what we've seen on the 19th of February, we don't want a repeat of. You know, we've seen a lot of lack of duty of care, a lot of lack of care towards individuals, civilians, and even children for that matter. We've seen grown men brutalising elderly people the same age as their mother and father, and brutalising children that they've got to go home and look at their own children in the eyes as well. So, you know, moving forward to the 21st of March to stand here on Gadigal land internationally right around the world, you know, it does raise quite a number of concerns, but us as First Nations people will continue to stand and insert our authority, you know, alongside groups like the Palestinian Action Group that stand in solidarity with First Nations people here on Gadigal land, you know, and we're, you know, certain to march from Hyde Park down to, you know, the Sydney Opera House to stand in a position where our ancestors were unalived and were taken by the system and perished at the end of the current system as upholding the First Fleet's orders. You know, we're hopeful that the 21st of March protest at Hyde Park will go ahead without any, you know, incidents from police, but we'll have to deal with that on the day. And like I said, as First Nations people, we don't accept any laws on this land, because this land always was and always will be Aboriginal land. And, you know, this is stolen land, and us as First Nations people, when they start to implement laws in relation to oppression and segregation of people, to, you know, scrutinise the government, you best better believe First Nations people will be there to defy them, due to the fact that we will not take any orders from a colonial construct that is constantly oppressing the First Nations people at the top of the list, but middle class citizens of society as well.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. All right, so that's it. I think they're going to do a photo op now. I wanted to ask a question, but I didn't get to do it at the end because it kind of got wound up, and I'm not one to ask questions. But let's get a photo. And my question would have been about the LRAD, the infamous LRAD.
Aboriginal land. Always was, always will be. Aboriginal land. Yalu. Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Aboriginal land. Always was, always will be. Aboriginal